I find it very fitting that it never rains in Southern California. And the day that I decide to film a video about how to water your plants, it's raining. Our number one question that we're asked when we're selling plant tonic is, how do I water my plants? And I'm here with a super hippie scientific explanation on how to do just that. There's a sacred intelligence of interconnectedness when discussing this topic. On average, the human body is made up of 60 to 70% water, depending on body type, age, sex, diet, activity level, etc. Plants contain more water than our own meat sacks. Their water composition is about 90%, and their requirements depend on type, age, sex, fertilizer, soil type, container type, season, light exposure, just to name a few things. So there's really no exact measurement on how much you should water each plant because they are like us, uniquely requiring different amounts of water based on conditions of our own environment. With that being said, not meeting a plant's water requirements is the biggest killer. So this video is about how to understand your plant's communication and translate their signs in just the same way we have learned about our bodies and when we are dehydrated. Domesticated plants need, love, and require our human touch, so consider yourself in a relationship with nature. It's complicated, but oh so worth it. Random fact for you, plants actually talk to each other. Susan Simard is known for her forest ecology work at the University of British Columbia and used radioactive carbon to scientifically test and conclude trees communicate with one another. This is why I believe it's such a good idea to group plants together, especially the moisture-loving tropical plants you may have. If you're new to having a plant relationship, bottom watering or placing a plant with drainage holes in a container partially filled with water can be effective because in theory, your plant will only absorb the water it needs via a wicking effect. But it can be risky behavior if you don't dump the excess water after a couple of hours or if you share the same container with multiple plants because you may spread diseases or pests if you don't know what to look for. And speaking of knowing what to look for, a plant that has been sufficiently watered should have the soil on the surface of it that is the texture of freshly used wet coffee grounds. These are plants that I purchased over a year ago from Planterina, and they're actually in the same nursery pots they came in. If you choose to upgrade the pots, make sure to use the right soil mix and containers that complement your watering style. I personally am very heavy-handed with watering, so things like pumice, perlite, and orchid bark really help to provide great beneficial bacteria and drainage to prevent root rot. If in between waterings, your soil frequently looks like it's fresh ground coffee beans that haven't been brewed into coffee quite yet, that might mean that you're a little more light-handed when it comes to watering. So try to go for soil moisture retaining materials like peat moss, coconut husk, compost, stuff like that, that helps really keep in that moisture while also opting for glazed ceramic pots over something like terracotta. But also keep in mind most indoor houseplants do like to dry out in between waterings. Make sure to always inspect your plant before you water it. Now this monstera is super dry and it's telling me it needs to be watered. I can tell because the terracotta and the soil are super dry. In fact, dry as a bone while the leaves look droopy and have begun to curl. Sometimes you can see similar symptoms if a plant has been overwatered. So you really want to make sure that you check out the soil and the leaf structure. My poor baby. This is more dry than I typically allow it to get because extreme drought can really hurt your plant's leaf structure at a cellular level, as well as kill off a majority of the living microorganisms in the soil. In fact, when microorganisms start to die off in the soil becomes hydrophobic or water repelling versus hydrophilic, which is water attracting. This means water will either drain right through a pot and not really moisten the soil at all, or pull at the surface of the soil and take forever to drain down. So in this case, the water drained right out because of the soil's hydrophobia, and it took close to a half an hour for the terracotta and the soil to pull the water back up with that wicking effect mentioned earlier. Typically, I water my plants once a week, sometimes every two depending on the season of the earth, but also the season of my life. There's a lot of content regarding the finger test where you stick your finger beneath the soil surface, past your knuckles to feel the moisture level of the soil, or even using a moisture meter. But really, the point of these methods is to get in touch with your plant. This is why the plant tonic we sell is so rejuvenating for your plants. The same microorganisms that help keep our fish alive also help restore the biodiversity that dies off when your soil dries out in between waterings. Because most plant root systems do favor short periods of dry soil, watering your plants with nutrient-rich, biodiverse plant fertilizer maintains balance within the natural order of the plant world. As a result, I find the best way to water a plant is to water the plant from the top to start the rehydration process of the soil and root systems. Then I allow the water to drain down into the cover pot or saucer, and finally allow the water to gradually wick up and restore what was lost over time. So as you watch this content on the World Wide Web, remember that biologists call the communication between trees and plants the Wood Wide Web, and that thanks to our gal Susan, we know that plants connect with one another via underground networks interconnected with mycelium, which is a type of fungus. They are constantly communicating with one another, sharing nutrients with neighboring buddies, searching for family members, sending warning signals, and helping dying plants get nutrients they need. In a poetic thought, this means we are all connected. We just need to understand how to interpret the signs a little better to not only survive, but thrive in our environment.